How do I do it all during the holidays? 4 words. Shipped same day delivery. With Shipped, I can order groceries from Albertsons, decor from Michael's, even gifts for my furry friend from PetSmart. Plus, my personal shopper brings everything I need that same day. That makes it a breeze to decorate, get my shopping done, and make time for all the holiday parties. Do it all this holiday season with Shipped. Download the app or visit Shipped.com. That's SHIPT.com.
Running a business comes with a lot of what-ifs. But luckily, there's a simple answer to them. Shopify. It's the commerce platform behind millions of businesses, including Thrive Cosmetics and Momofuku. And it'll help you with everything you need. From website design and marketing to boosting sales and expanding operations, Shopify can get the job done and make your dream a reality. Turn those what-ifs into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
You don't technically need this car. You say that out loud to yourself. You say, I have no space. You say, I'm just looking. Then you click. Then you zoom in on photo number 87 and whisper, oh no. Then you text a friend, the one who always enables you. You say to yourself, this is the last one, knowing it is not. You don't need this car. But maybe, just maybe, this car needs you. Bring a trailer. It's never just a car.
We are live. What's up, everybody? My name is Garrett Chapman, and this is the Falcons podcast. Not much to talk about, right? No, it's just people putting some interesting things out there on social media. I do want to address that and just during the podcast, and we'll talk about what I saw here from Falcons and Colts over there in Berlin. I'll take your comments as well if you have questions. If anything else, I was up at Flowery Branch all afternoon today. I was talking to Raheem on Monday as well. So I have a little bit of insight that I think I can share with you guys. So would be very pleased to do that. But welcome in. I see we got folks on all kinds of different platforms. So no matter where you get your podcast, no matter if you're listening live, if you're coming in later, make sure to follow the podcast. Make sure to subscribe. Make sure to like the video. Make sure to drop a comment if you have something you want to see, something you want to have improved. I don't know. I don't live your life, but would love to have you interact with the pod in any way that you can. But welcome in. Give me a follow at GChapATL. That's the best way to stay up to date on everything that we got going on here. And if you're coming in from Twitter, welcome. If you're coming in on Spotify after the fact, welcome to you as well. YouTube, Facebook, doesn't matter. We're happy to have you. All right. I'm going to jump into some of these comments quickly just to kind of clear these out. And then I'm going to get to, if you have any, I want to get to as many as I possibly can here on the pod here tonight. Robbie Red 1126. What's up, my man? I'm seeing you there. Jake Hutchinson 5761 says 100% they are to a shameful degree. I think that's a reference to the title of the podcast here today. It's Are They Failing Michael Penix? I mean, you can have that opinion if you want to. I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think that there's some things that he can absolutely do better. Michael, I'm talking about, and there are also some things that this team needs to do better as well. I'm not going to get too deep into X's and O's and stuff like that. I don't feel like I'm qualified enough to do that. And if you, that's just how I stand on it. I don't call the plays. I didn't play quarterback. That's not something that I've done, and that's not something I'm going to pretend to do either. We got everyone else. Yeah. So Scott comes in. He says he was at Flowery Branch today. Lots of Penix talk, including some Penix talking. Yeah, and we'll get to that here in just a little bit. I don't know if I can actually play the video itself that somebody took out of context, but I'm happy to read some of these comments. Falcons Creed says Zach needs to be out of here. We could talk about that. We could talk about a little bit of the issues that Zac Robinson's having and how this team can improve and the ways that I feel like this team can absolutely improve down the stretch. Trenton Flew F1U says, what's up, Garrett? Did you make it to London? Did you see the intensity from our quarterback after the game? He seems in better spirits today. The game was in Berlin, first off. But yes, I get the spirit of your question, Trenton. No, I was not able to go out to Europe. I wish I could. That's just an awesome trip. I know my little brother went on the trip and he had a blast. He keeps sending me pictures of everything. And I was able to talk to a bunch of people who did go. And the perception was pretty consistent across the board. You know, you had a bunch of people talking about how much fun that was. The people there are really, really into it. They love the NFL. They think that it's a lot of fun. And it's just kind of a fun byproduct. It's just some other thing that they can go do, I guess. And the energy in the stadium, I heard, was fantastic. And it kind of came through when I was watching the broadcast. They said it felt even stronger when you were there. All 32 teams were pretty much represented just in the stands, different people who adopt different teams. And it's kind of like when the Premier League comes to the United States. I've been to several of those matches over there at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And it's a fun atmosphere. It's very loose. Obviously not on the field. That's a completely different type of interaction. But as far as fans go, and everyone's singing and having a great time. And plus, I mean, you have the historical context of what that stadium means and what it has historically, the importance of that stadium. But no, I will say, as far as Mike goes, completely different perception of his mentality today versus what we saw in Berlin over there on Sunday. Look, he's hard on himself. He's very, very hard on himself. And that's something that Michael Penix talked about today. It's something Raheem Morris talked about today. Zac Robinson talked about it as well. It was a very common thread throughout the course of today. And Raheem actually, speaking of some of the comments that were taken out of context today, Raheem actually sat down with Mike. I think it was on Tuesday, I believe it was. They sat down and basically had the conversation. They hashed it out. And I can read you guys the quote. And this is straight from Michael Penix. So actually, let me start. So there's a quote going around. And I figured I was going to go through some of these other comments, but I'm going to jump into this quote, this quote, because I feel like a lot of comments are going to be about this. So there's an account on social media. I'm not going to shout out who they are. If you know who they are, great. And there's also Dog Kleiman or whatever. Don't ever follow that guy. That guy's terrible. It just gleans content from other people. It doesn't give them credit for it. And then terribly takes things out of context. But there's an account on social media, Twitter specifically. It says, quote, Falcons quarterback Michael Penix Jr. says he has nobody to rely on the sidelines. Says most of the advice given to him is from old high school and college coaches. First and foremost, this is patently false. This is not at all what he said. It's not in any way, shape, or form. I know that because I asked him after the fact. I saw this tweet come out, and Michael Penix was quite literally 10 feet away from me, and I walked over him. Mark Ramondi he did it the same thing from ESPN. I walked over to him, asked him point blank, is this what you were trying to say? I showed him the post, and he laughed and said no. He shook his head and confirmed as much. It's not what he was saying. He was not saying that he doesn't have anybody. It's a horribly misquoted piece there. And the caption itself is just a complete indictment of whoever this person thinks that they are trying to report. But as far as some quotes, some context of some other things that, as far as him leaning on the coaching staff, and look, I'm not defending the coaching staff either. That's not what I'm trying to do here. I just think it's critically important that if you were going to come out and make a comment like this and say something like this, you better be accurate. It's something that needs to be accurate. And what is being said here is not accurate. The truth of the matter is that Raheem Morris and Michael Penix actually sat down and had a heart-to-heart type of conversation. They've been leaning on each other as they've been going through this brutal stretch of games. That's what you do with a head coach, and especially a popular player's coach like Raheem Morris is. His players really adore him, and they support him. But the quote from Penix, and I'll read as much of this as I can. Whenever I'm not completing wide open passes, I feel like I'm letting the team down. What you're talking about with Raheem, talking about their conversation, we did have that conversation, and it did help to hear that from him. Obviously, knowing that everybody in the building, they understand what's going on outside of what the people outside might not understand, as far as what's going on and why we can't be what we want to be. So Raheem gave me that perspective and just told me to just give myself some grace and not be so hard on myself. He felt like it's a good trait to have, but obviously you still got to give yourself grace at the end of the day. I know I've talked about that before here. I don't know if that was camp or what early on, but yeah, that's all it was. It was good. That is a quote verbatim from Michael Penix, the starting quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons. The comment that original post had, patently false, and it is not what he was saying. He's not calling out his coaches. He's not saying any of those things. He told me, and that's all there is to it. This is it's. I understand there's frustration in the fan base. I understand people want heads to roll. People are mad. People want this team to win games. and they want somebody to be fired. They want some blood. That's really what they want. They want somebody to be fired. And it's critically important not to take a player's quotes out of context. It's critically important to have that, especially when you're talking about somebody's livelihood, somebody's job, and somebody's reputation. It's just not the way that you need to be going about things. And I think fans need to be better. I understand you're going to get emotional responses from people, but there's a right way to go about things, and misquoting people to this degree is absolutely not the way to go about it. And I was very disappointed that it came out, and look, it's not what he said. It's not what he meant. And that's pretty much all there is to it. I'm going to go back to some of these comments here. If you want to ask me any questions about that, I'm happy to answer those. I'm happy to go through it. That's just, sorry, there isn't more of an exciting type of thing that he was saying. There is no controversy between Michael Penix and his coaching staff. All right, I got Falcons Creed because hits me with a hello, Garrett. Hello. I'm trying to go back through some of these comments. If you have comments, questions, anything else like that, I'm more than happy to jump into it. Drake3872, if we lose to the Panthers at home Sunday, what's the fallout look like? Great question. Let's put a pin in that. I think that's going to be a critically important thing. Drake, I'm going to come back to that. I promise I will. Falcons Creed says, I would say they are failing Mike. Past game definitely showcased some of the flaws, but the lackluster wide receiver room and the play calling hasn't helped one bit. Third down has been awful, play calling and execution wise. Yeah. So, I mean, that's one of the biggest things here. This third down, and this kind of gets me into some of my reactions here from Sunday. Look, this is not a good situation that the Falcons find themselves in, specifically on third down. And that's a place where Michael Penix needs to be better. He had some bad misses, right? He finishes the game. He's 0 of 8 on third down. And I'm not going to put it all on him necessarily. And Falcons Creed, thank you for the question. It's going to come back to the quarterback, especially when you drop back to pass on all 8 of those failed conversions. Now, again, there's a lot more that goes into it. Mostly, I mean, you have some plays that are on first and second down that also have to matter, right? When your average down in distance is 3rd and 7, you're not going to be converting a lot of those plays. I think, I want to say the Locked On podcast, Eric Freeman, I think he quoted something about like 20% or something of the like of when teams in the NFL have a 3rd and 7 or longer, then it's not good, right? I mean, now the Falcons have an offer in this game. It's only the second time in franchise history that's happened to them. That's unacceptable. I said as much. I wrote as much when I was doing all my recaps and everything else and putting all that stuff out there. It's unacceptable because it costs you the chance to win games, especially when you have a defense that's doing enough to get your team a chance to go win a football game. I said enough. I didn't say they had a good game. I didn't say they did well. I didn't say they did anything particularly well, but they did enough. They turned the ball over. They got the ball back a couple of times there, and they sacked Daniel Jones several times. And shoot, I mean, you held the NFL's best offense to 25 points in regulation for only the 3rd time this season. That's a pretty big deal, and that's a pretty good response there from the defense. Now, you allowed 240 plus yards to Jonathan Taylor and 300 yards on the ground. That's unacceptable. But the point is to bring it back to the third down. You have to give your team a chance to rest on the sidelines. I mean, I saw a lot of situations where the Falcons were only out there for 5 plays or fewer. And that's not good. You have to stay on the field. You have to give your defense a chance. And if you're just running them ragged like they did in this game and just get crushed with time of possession, especially when you have a guy that you can turn around and hand the ball off to with Jonathan Taylor, then eventually that's going to wear you down. And eventually you're going to have what happens when they go on that 80-plus yard, 82, 85-yard touchdown run that Jonathan Taylor had. Eventually that kind of thing is going to happen. And that comes back to third down on offense. It's a complementary football game. That's the game of football. It's all complementary. And the offense needs to be better. But on those eight dropbacks, right? Because all 8 dropbacks were on third downs, right? So all third downs had a dropback from Michael Penix. 3 of them he was sacked. 1 of them he was fumbled. Let's go into that just a little bit. One of the fumble is not his fault. It's it's Kyle Pitts' fault. You can see him at the line of scrimmage. He does a little check. He does the check, and Kyle Pitts is supposed to drop off and do a different route. He was supposed to be a hot route. That's why he stares him down like that, and that's why he hits him with that little hitch. And that's that moment of hesitation that leads to the sack fumble. leads to 7 points for the Colts. That's what happened. I mean, you have the head coach confirming as much after the game. He said it twice, actually. Then you also have another sack that was given up where Jake Matthews does not hear the snap. It's some kind of miscommunication between Ryan Newsel and Jake Matthews. It's one of their fault. I would assume it's not going to be the guy who's been there from started every single game for like a decade. I'm assuming it's not going to be on that guy, but he doesn't start. And you have a free rusher on Michael Penix and he gets sacked. Actually, he bends out and he rolls out to the outside. And he's sacked for no loss, but it's a turnover and you have to punt. As far as the passes go, you have the brutal miss to David Sills where the footwork was terrible. And that's one where, I mean, Mike has to be better. Mike objectively has to be better there. You have the Bijan Robinson screen that goes to Drake London. It's because Drake London misses a block. You have, what was it? The touch pass to Kyle Pitts down the left sideline where he just barely underthrows it. I would say if he puts a little bit more air under that, it's a touchdown. Instead, you have to attempt a field goal, right? There are a lot of different things here, right? But execution is major. It's execution. And that's really what it comes back to. And that's what I keep coming back to is the fact that, look, you can be as critical on the coaching staff as you want to because ultimately execution comes back to the coaches. I get that fact. But the players have to hold some of this accountability too. They absolutely have to hold some of this accountability. So I mentioned the down and distance, and then outside of that, it's execution. You have to do more. And you do the down and distance, you get that figured out because you run the ball better. And this is one where I'm kind of critical on Zac Robinson just a little bit is because you're running the ball at a high clip. In fact, this is actually the first time that you're running the ball in you have a positive EPA for the entire game on an EPA per rush standpoint for the first time since you played the Bills in Atlanta. It's been a while. You were positive in EPA per rush. I don't understand why you didn't just continue to do it. This is one of those types of teams. I think that the mentality of the Falcons last week, it reminded me a little, I don't remember which game it was, but it was with Arthur Smith where they run the ball on 12, 13, 14 consecutive plays. I don't think that the Colts could have stopped it. They weren't stopping it. Just go do that. Just do it. And I think that you would have had a little bit more success because Mike was struggling. Mike struggled in this game. And this is one where you can talk about, maybe I'd say the coaching staff was failing him, or just the Falcons in general, whether it's his wide receivers. You mentioned the wide receivers Falcons creed. I don't think that the wide receivers on this team have been any good outside of Drake London. Darnell Mooney has been an unmitigated disaster this season. I mean, he's got, 190 yards. He's fourth on this team in receiving. If he's healthy, and Zac Robinson keeps telling us he's going to take off soon, but I have not seen that yet. I have seen nothing to the contrary, right? I have not seen him do anything. Until he proves us wrong, then I'm not going to give him that kind of credit. Drake London's been marvelous. He's been spectacular. A lot of different adjectives to use to describe wide receiver 1, but wide receiver 2 and beyond are non-existent. And that's a spot where the Falcons are not doing enough for their young quarterback. They're not. And then the offensive line play has been at best middling. And that's not great for a young quarterback. I just mentioned a handful of times where execution was lacking and you get free hits on a quarterback, and that's just not good enough. It's not good enough. And that's just kind of the story of this Falcons season anyway. But as far as Mike he goes in this, and I go back to what I was saying about just running the ball. You had a lead for most of this game, right? You had a lead, at least in the second half, you had a lead. And Michael Penix completed just 30% of his passes in the fourth quarter, 3 of 10 in the fourth quarter.
This episode is brought to you by Netflix. This Monday night, witness the end of an era. John Cena takes center stage for his final appearance ever on Monday Night Raw. One last match, one unforgettable farewell. Come celebrate the legacy of a true WWE legend. Monday Night Raw, November 17th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Time, only on Netflix. Be there for the moment everyone will be talking about.
I turned off news altogether.
I hate to say it, but I don't trust much of anything.
It's the rage bait.
feels like it's trying to divide people.
If we got clear facts, maybe we could calm down a little.
NBC News brings you clear reporting. Let's meet at the facts. Let's move forward from there. NBC News, reporting for America.
All 3 of those completions came on one drive. That's how much he suffered. And it's not even the fact that they went away from it, because they still ran the ball a good bit in there in the second half. It really just felt like it, because every time he dropped back, it was an incomplete pass, aside from the 1 touchdown drive. And mind you, the Falcons punted or ran out of time on their other 4 possessions in the fourth quarter and overtime. He didn't complete a single pass outside of the touchdown drive. That's not very good, and that's not doing enough to support your quarterback. Falcons Creed comes back in here, and he says, I've also seen people talking about how the playbook is fostered towards a right-handed quarterback and that Penix often has to turn all the way around to complete passes, but can't tell if that holds weight, though. I don't know. I know Falcons Creed, I saw the one post that you're talking about, or one of the posts, I guess you could say, that you were talking about. It was on the near interception to Sauce Gardner. It's one of the third down plays, by the way. That was one. I think that's just elite cornerback play. It's as much that I don't know how much of an impact a right-handed quarterback versus a left-handed quarterback is going to have. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. I wish I did. But I think a lot of that is just you have an all-pro corner that you're playing, and he made a great play, and you just got to lay it up to him and say, hey, great play. Siphon M comes over here on YouTube. Says, I would like to see Raheem be more involved in play calling on offense. Dan Campbell did that versus Washington. Dan Quinn is about to start that for his defense. Just take control of the situation, really. Yeah, I mean, I know what you're saying. Raheem is more of a defensive-minded coach. He does have experience on offense, just going back to his time actually here in Atlanta in the 2010s with Dan Quinn. And Dan Quinn did that here in Atlanta too, when this team turned around and went on that big run. Maybe. I don't think he's ever called plays before. I don't know if he's ever been involved in the play calling process. To answer your question, I don't know if that's actually going to help solve anything. Maybe. I don't know the full extent that Dan Campbell was actually getting involved in that. I know he was talking into his headset and other things. I don't know if he was necessarily calling the plays. I can't speak on that because I don't cover the Lions. But I know he's a very involved coach, and I know he's done stuff like that. I just know for a fact that Dan Quinn did that here in Atlanta in 2016. But as far as Dan Campbell goes, I can't answer that. I keep on rolling through, and DeMarcus, I see your question in there. I don't know. I don't know. It says Atlanta Falcons right from. I don't know what you're talking about. All right, I do want to come back to this other question that I was said that was brought up. If you have comments, you have questions, if you have anything else, no matter where you're coming in from, drop it in the feed, and I'm more than happy to dive into some of these. Drake 3872. I told you I was going to come back to this, so I will. And then I'll get into some other Colts and Falcons reactions here. So if you lose to the Panthers at home Sunday, what's the fallout look like? Well, not good. I would imagine that the situation at Flowery Branch would become untenable. There would have to be some kinds of changes, and it all comes back to the fact that we are not in the room when Raheem Morris is having his conversations with Arthur Blank. They do it every single Monday. That's something that is it's not that Arthur Blank is super involved necessarily. It's just he owns a multi-billion-dollar franchise and he wants to have an explanation, and they have a quick meeting. It's not anything else. He just wants to have an explanation of what's going on with his team, right? I don't know what's going on in those conversations. I don't know what Raheem Morris is saying. I don't know anything else outside of the fact that I know they happen, right? But he has to be telling Arthur Blank a lot more than he tells us. I'm sure that's the fact. But there's going to have to be a change. If they lose a 5th consecutive game on Sunday, especially to a division rival who would then have swept you in the season series, something is going to happen. These games are becoming increasingly, the opportunities to turn your season around have become increasingly scarce. And I'd say that, playoffs are a distant thought here. I'm not going to come in here and say that they have a chance of making the postseason. I think last I saw was like 5 to 10% or something like that. It's extremely unlikely, but it's also the fact that you would need help. And I think the Wild card is probably too much to expect, but you still get to play the Buccaneers. You still have the schedule itself is actually okay, right? And it's the fact too that the last 2 games that you've played were both on the road and to teams who now have a combined record of 16-4. You lost those games by a combined 7 points. I would actually say that Michael Penix had his best road performance of the season up in New England. I'd say he was pretty damn good in that game. But ultimately, you come back to this team plays better at home, by the way, just throwing that out there. This is a significantly better team at home outside of that one insane football game that they played with the Miami Dolphins here in Atlanta. When you lose Michael Penix, you lose Drake London. I'm not going to make excuses for them. You lose by 24 points to the Miami Dolphins. It's inexcusable, but you also didn't have your starting quarterback and everything. There were a lot of other factors involved in that. But your next 3 games, the combined record is 9-20 or something like that. You have the Jets, you've got the Panthers on Sunday, which is a 500 football team, mind you. They've actually had a pretty good turnaround. I'd say the Falcons were their turnaround game, but then you have the Saints. Let's say you win Sunday, because there's no way of looking ahead, not with a team that's 3-6. It's just not a responsible thing to do. But if you look at this team as on a week-to-week basis, they should be favored in about 4-ish games, at least 5 games. And if you're Raheem Morris and you're trying to make an explanation to the owner, you need to have a strong finish to the season. And that means you have to win some games. And I tell you what, if Arthur Blank has to wear the fact that they traded a top 10 pick, much less if it gets worse. If it gets worse, then, I mean, that's going to be a very difficult situation for Raheem Morris to climb out of. But it's going to be bad. It's going to be bad. But I think Raheem Morris is still absolutely in a spot where he can save his job. Starts on Sunday. You have to get a win. And I don't like throwing around the terms must win. I think it's very sports radio. I'm in sports radio. I love sports radio, but it's very kind of clickbaity, I guess you could say, to say that somebody is in a must-win game. You have to win. It's the NFL. Every game's a must-win game. You have to turn around and put on a good performance because every game could be your last game. And there are so many cliches with that. But this is one of those types of games because if the Falcons lose on Sunday, changes are going to be made. They have to be made. I mean, I don't think that they're in a situation where those decisions have already been made, but they're trending very close to it, and they have to be pretty careful with it. Let's just put it that way. But 9-20, that's the record of your next 3 opponents. You win 3 games, and I'm not predicting this is going to happen, but I'm saying in the situation where you win your next 3 games, you're 6-6. And then you're staring down the rest of your schedule, and you just need to pluck a couple of games there. You can salvage something from this season. You can salvage something. And a lot of those games are coming at home. So I think there's still plenty to be gained here for the season. And I don't think that Raheem Morris he's on the hot seat. Don't get me wrong. He's on the hot seat. And I think Zac Robinson's on the very hot seat, especially with the way that this offense has been playing as of late. They know that. They understand that fact. And look, they appreciate it. It's a job where you're hired to be fired. Keep on rolling through here. Gregory over there on Facebook says, bottom line, our defense can't stay on the field. Not converting third downs hurt us, not to mention our special teams have been bad all year. Yes, actually, special teams have been one of the unsung villains of this Falcons team this year. One player who I have been pretty critical of, and I think deserves a good bit of criticism and doesn't get a lot of it, I would say even on social media, is Jamal Agnew. He was brought in here to be a difference maker in special teams, and he hasn't been. I mean, the average yards per return is it's not there. And he's taking up a roster spot. More importantly, he's taking up one of those roster spots at the wide receiver position. It is very bad. The wide receiver room is very bad. David Sills is not a guy that I feel like this team can consistently rely on. Casey Washington is not a guy that this team can consistently rely on. You have a lot of practice squad guys that are rolling up there at the wide receiver position, and then you cut your wide receiver 3. And in those instances, you have a Kadero Hodge who's also a special teams ace. It's tough, and it's really burned them this year, especially with a young quarterback. And then when you have situations on coverage that have just not been good enough, you're giving up far too much in terms of return yardage and kickoff and in punts. And you're giving effectively mulligans. You're pushing the best offense in the NFL, and they're starting at midfield on half of their possessions. I mean, it is brutally unacceptable. It just does not make sense to me. And Raheem said as much. He said, these are fixable things today. You got to fix it. You got to fix it. And it's been a consistent theme for this team. It burned them against the Buccaneers. It was actually, I'd say, one of the biggest reasons that they lost that game. And of course, Younghoe Koo is going to get a lot of that heat, but kickoff coverage was brutal in that game. Punt coverage was brutal in that game. You had the Buccaneers starting on very short fields far too often, and it set them up. It gave them momentum, and it literally charged the Buccaneers and their comeback in that game. Special teams has not been good, and special teams need to be corrected. And special teams has been a bit of an issue across the league. I think the kickoff change that the NFL enacted has done exactly what they wanted it to. They brought some extra excitement to kickoffs, but Falcons have to be better, and it starts with special teams. And I mean, that's one of those things that people don't pay a lot of attention to special teams, but those are hidden yards, very much hidden yards. And that's something that the Falcons have to be better at. Let's see. Michael Rojas, 8413. Actually, I have this written down. It says, on a positive note, Walker and Pierce are playing well and happy with the investment. If Walker keeps it up, he may have a shot at Defensive Rookie of the Year. I absolutely agree. And, I got up here, Michael Rojas, and I was sitting here talking about James Pierce all summer, like a lot of people were, mostly because Jalen Walker was unhealthy. Like he was hurt. He was hurt. And it's hard to talk about somebody who's not playing, right? But since Jalen Walker has been playing, the dude's a freaking stud. He's so good. He is so damn good. And the Falcons have needed every little bit of it, right? I would say that one of the big things, I mean, and I have a stat on here talking about how like this team is without Divine Diablo and everything else. But one of the most important things here for the Falcons is the fact that you have a young guy in Jalen Walker who is well beyond his years. He's a leader. Going back to his time at UGA, and I know people who are connected to him within the UGA program. Going back to his time in high school, this is who he has been throughout his career, a leader. Jeff Ulbrich today said he's not going to be. He carries himself like a 10-year vet, and that he wouldn't be surprised if he's going to be wearing a team captain patch for the rest of his career. It wouldn't surprise me if he's a team captain for this team next year. That is the kind of guy that you have in Jalen Walker. And James Pierce, I'm not trying to forget about him here, but Jalen Walker, if he continues to do what he is doing right now, where he is elite for somebody his age in all facets of his game, and he's only going to get better. Now, progress is not always linear, right? It's not always something where it just continues to uptick. But based off of personality, based off of work ethic, based off of what we've seen so far and the body of work, Jalen Walker is the real deal. And Jalen Walker is one of the biggest reasons why I am excited about this team moving forward. I am very excited about this team. James Pierce is another one of those guys. James Pierce, he may not have the sack totals that Jalen Walker has. And you mentioned Defensive Rookie of the Year, Rojas. I know you mentioned that. I think he can absolutely jump in there. If he can continue getting some sacks and doing some big things in that way, those are the eye poppers, right? Like if he comes out, if he gets 4 more sacks over the next 9 games, that's 8. That's right there in the mix as far as statistical kind of outputs that you want to see from a Defensive Rookie of the Year. He needs 4 more. He's had 3 in the last 2 games.
Wherever Bud goes, his harmonica goes with him. It's a pocket full of soul. Now he's living with prostate cancer. He asked his doctor about Xtandi enzalutamide. Xtandi 40 milligram tablets treats men with prostate cancer that has spread to other parts of the body and responds to a medical or surgical treatment to lower testosterone. Xtandi may cause serious side effects: seizure, a brain condition called PRESS, allergic reactions, heart disease that can lead to death, falls and bone fractures, swallowing problems, or choking that can lead to death. Stop Xtandi and get medical help at once if your face, tongue, lip, or throat start swelling. Tell your doctor at once if you faint, have a seizure, quickly worsening headache, decreased alertness, confusion, vision problems, chest pain or discomfort, or shortness of breath. Xtandi can cause harm to an unborn baby or miscarriage. Use birth control during and 3 months after Xtandi. Common side effects include muscle and joint pain, feeling unusually tired, hot flashes, constipation, less appetite, diarrhea, high blood pressure, bleeding, falls, fractures, and headache. Talk to your doctor and visit Xtandi.com.
If he can do that, shoot. If he can get to double-digit sacks, it's in the bag. It's in the bag. And I'm really excited about Jalen Walker. I just think the sky is the limit for him. But James Pierce, going back to what we have with James, it's the fact that he gives you an edge. He gives you that element off of the edge that I don't think this team has really had at all. You have a guy with a bona fide mean streak when he's on the field. And that guy's tough. He's tough, and he's so damn fast. The speed that you have seen from James Pierce, it's only gotten better. And I think both of these guys, especially with the way Leonard Floyd has been dealing with a couple of injuries, especially with the way that I think that you're starting to see Arnold Ebiketie get phased out a little bit more. For better or for worse, it's these two guys. And you're going to see, in my opinion, you're going to start seeing some of these guys ramp up the more that the season goes on. And the more snaps, you can talk about Abdul Carter, he gets more reps. He just does. This is a Falcons team who wants to rotate guys as much as possible, but Leonard Floyd's still dealing with an injury. There is a very good chance that he doesn't play or he's not even close to 100% in this game this week. And I think that, if the Falcons offense can find something against this Carolina Panthers defense that's been largely average, I think you can say, then you're going to give yourself some pass rushing opportunities, because that is the craziest thing about this. This defense was set up for an explosive offense. They are on pace to break the franchise record in sacks. They're on pace for that. And they have not had the explosive offense. If they can get something to that level here over the next couple of weeks, you might see this defense really take that next step, especially if you can get Divine Diablo back into the mix, which we'll talk about here in just a little bit. But no, those two, I am so over the moon excited. And anytime you see any of these people talk about, oh, the Falcons traded that pick and oh my gosh, it's going to be X, Y, tell them to kick rocks. Tell them to kick rocks, because the Falcons got James Pierce Jr., somebody who absolutely transformed their franchise over the first, first half of the season. This is a guy who is taking a massive step in addressing the biggest need that this franchise has had for 15 years? It's been a long time coming. All they're going to do with that pick anyway is probably turn around and go address the pass rush with a James Pierce. So you already have that guy in-house, and they fell in love with that guy, and he's been everything advertised here in a Falcons uniform. So you also got Xavier Watts, mind you. But this is a defense that I think has not yet reached its peak, or maybe it did earlier in the season, but I think it can return to it. But it all comes back to Divine Diablo, and I think he is going to be making that return. And actually, speaking of which, I do want to address that. Divine Diablo. So first off, he has the fractured forearm, right? And the way that this defense was playing in the first half of the season, over the first, 5 games, I guess you could say, they were the number 2 defense in the NFL. I think they got as high as the number 1 defense in the NFL, but number 1 or number 2, doesn't matter. They hadn't given up a 100-yard rusher. They hadn't given up a 100-yard receiver. They hadn't given up a 200-yard passer or even 300 yards of total offense. All 4 of those things have happened, by the way, in the 4 games that he went down, starting with that game in San Francisco. Right now, over all those 4 games, the Falcons have given up an average of 125 more yards of total offense, an extra touchdown and change more per game, 52 yards through the air and 73 yards on the ground per game. Like, if you want some quantifiable facts, some quantifiable things, some figures on just how important Divine Diablo is to this defense, that's it. And Raheem Morris gave some positive news that I'm going to put out here just in a little bit. I just got to put the final touches on it, but you can expect that to come out in the morning. So keep an eye on that. Give me a follow at GChapATL, and you'll get that notification. But this team could be getting Divine Diablo back in week 12. It's not a guarantee. But it is something that if he comes back, you need it. This defense sorely needs him. And he is just such an elevating factor because J.D. Bertrand has struggled. Ronnie Harrison he's been okay, but it's been a committee approach. And it's just, you lack the killer in the middle, and it's kind of left in it. It's left a hole in the middle of your defense. And it's a reason that they've lost a couple of games. I would say that there was one of the biggest reasons why they lost that game to the Miami Dolphins. It's because you didn't have Divine Diablo. You insert Divine Diablo I understand you lost by 24 points, but it was a bit of a snowballing effect there. I'd say that this team would have had a much better chance of winning that game against Miami had Divine Diablo been there. And it was a spot where they went right at JD Bertrand that whole game. And I'm not going to relitigate all that stuff. I'm not trying to get all into that, but there is a positive direction that this defense can still take. And I think this team overall. OB comes through here, says, did you hear Penix say he doesn't have any quarterback to talk to but his high school coach? I addressed this at the beginning of the podcast. I don't want to relitigate a lot of this. He did not say that. That's not what he was saying. This is, as far as quarterback goes, I mean, I don't know if the quarterback, as far as the quote that I saw, they were taken out of context, talking about how he doesn't have a coach that he can go to and anything else like that. You can go back and listen to the first half of the pod. You get that rewind function and go check it out. But I did address it, and I don't want to get too deep into it at this point in the pod. Let's see. Drake, come over here, says on YouTube, on the topic, can Jalen Walker play off ball next to Caden Ellis? Seen this several places. I don't know why you'd want to. I mean, he has been so good coming off of the edge, and he has made such a massive impact for this team coming off the edge. And he's dropped back into coverage. He's been in coverage this year. No, I don't think so, because he's flashed the elite potential off of the edge. And that's the guy who I think can go in and win Rookie of the Year. He's dropped back into coverage. I mean, that's something he's done. He's been playing in that off-ball type of situations. He's done that at times, but it's not as simple as, I mean, shoot, they move these guys all over the field. Caden Ellis is a pass rusher. I mean, he's a guy who they want to get in there and get his head in the mix. And that's one of those spots where getting Divine Diablo back is going to be so impactful, because that kind of unleashes Caden Ellis to go be just a Swiss Army knife to go do whatever he needs to, because you have an eraser in Divine Diablo there. But to answer your question, yes. I mean, he's done this. I want to see him on the edge. I want to see him continue to develop there, because that is what they drafted him to be. And I think that the more time that he has to develop on the edge, the better this team is going to be for it, because he has a lot of those traits already that he can drop back and be one of those off-ball guys. But his elite upside comes from everything else that he can do. Gregory over there on Facebook says, and if reports are true, the Divine Diablo returns in week 12, our D will be off the chain. Yes, it will. It absolutely will. He follows it up, says, kudos to kicker Zane Gonzalez for making his kicks. Yeah, shout out to him. Shout out to Zane for making his kicks. I think that's the expectation. This team just needs a guy who can consistently get back there. All right, let me make sure I've gone through everything. I hit the Jalen Walker, James Pierce, special teams. I actually got to. Either way, I know that a lot of people have been very frustrated. I know that a lot of people have been upset with things that are going on here with this Falcons team. Ultimately, you just need to win the game. You need to start winning some football games, and that is what everything comes back to. You've lost the last two by a combined 7 points, two teams who've won a combined 16 games. Not good enough. I understand it just adds to the frustration, especially the way that you've lost games, right? You have the missed extra point. You go back to week 1, you have the missed game-tying field goal. I mean, there have been heart-wrenching plays throughout the course of this season that if one or two of those things goes the right way, or the way of the Falcons, I should say, then we might be having a different conversation. But that's life in the NFL. This is a really hard game to play, right? That the season's not over. The odds of making the postseason are very small, admittedly. But if you win on Sunday, things can change pretty quickly, right? That's all they got to focus on. And we'll talk a lot more about that tomorrow. That's going to be our preview show. We'll get into that. So make sure you follow the podcast. Make sure to like everything. I really appreciate everybody who's jumped into the pod here today. Thank you for taking in here. I know that it's not always the most fun conversations to have when you have a losing football team like the Falcons have been as of late. But I think there is context that is very important that we have to keep in mind when you are addressing these things. And we'll see what this team can do. We'll see if they can get back and avenge a loss. We'll talk more about that tomorrow on our preview pod here on the Falcons podcast with Garrett Chapman. Make sure to set a reminder on your phone, Thursday, 6 p.m. I'll be jumping in here and we can talk all about it. So make sure to come prepared with some questions. I got some talking points that I want to jump into. We'll talk about injuries. We'll talk about all kinds of fun stuff. But remember, Scott and Nick, they're going to be live Monday morning and Wednesday morning. But make sure to subscribe to the channel, set those notifications, make sure that we are that you're jumping in and talking some Falcons football with us. My name is Garrett Chapman for Falcons on SI, and this is the Falcons podcast with Garrett Chapman. We will see you again next time. But until then, go Falcons.